I live in a place where the rain is, if it's a rainy day, then it's rains here. But if it's a kind of stream that you see the rain coming, the dark clouds and so on, but then suddenly it's turning to the right side and we don't get rain. So that I experienced a lot. And I asked an old man, and he said that's normal. So the place where I am is very dry, so I can grow pineapples. Sugar
Yeah, that's
apples.
the thing. We should, yeah, that's it. We adapt our crops to our conditions, right?
Yeah.
It's just because I have that 2 hectare plot for the animals down there with no irrigation.
Yeah.
And we've done a good job now with the boys. We've managed to cover everything, all the pasture.
Yeah.
And really, covered, all the tree rows. You're right, Jack?
Hi.
Nice one. So it's just because, I have a few systems with no irrigation. We always, it's a setback. Obviously, like we say, we will reach that point, but it just takes longer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But that's it. I'm really excited about the hectare system. I got 2 boys in. I had another one here. So between the 4 of us, we, within 10 days, we've managed the whole system,
Yeah, that's, yeah.
So, with 4 guys, it's a different story. You go in and in 10 days, you can do a lot. And we managed the whole system. So here I'm almost in control. I've got another maybe ½ hectare to manage. But, I feel like in the next week, in the next 10 days, that will be done. And then I'm feeling good now. I'm just really feeling good. I got some good boys here with us working. So everything is kind of working for real.
Yeah.
That manure that from the barn goes to every morning goes, with the system goes back to the grass.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's all in theory, when everything's actually working, it's a pleasure to see. So I'm really excited and, just looking forward to doing a bit of horse riding in the drought.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice.
It's something we can get up to.
Gennaro, where did you say that you organized the questions? Because I just see them here in the post. Did you put them somewhere else?
No, I put it in our WhatsApp. Our WhatsApp,
okay.
Our conversation. I managed to cut a few other things and put it there.
Okay.
All right.
Cool. Lots of questions today. Good stuff. Some new people that hadn't shown up before are asking questions. So this is
cool.
Gonna be pretty cool. Let's jump right into it. Do you want to start?
Let's get it going on. Let me pull this here. Yeah, Jack's question. Without access to eucalyptus seedlings, can we prune high strata service species such as Leucaenas to behave as emergent strata species? We prune high strata service species such as Leucaenas as emergent strata species. Yeah. Is Leucaena considered an emergent?
I think it's a high, isn't it? Leucaena, I think it's pronounced.
All right, yes. Yeah,
I think it depends on the species actually, because there are many species of Leucaena.
Okay.
Honestly, I see them, but as some species, I would even say that they're medium to high. But they definitely tolerate full sun. So they can be the tallest in the system. It's so yeah, you can do that. You can have them as the tallest tree in the system. Of course, they have a height limitation depending on what sort of species you're growing around them. Some Leucaena species, they just don't grow very tall. Some of them are really bushy. So if you need an emergent species that will be like 7 meters tall and to have like a straight linear main trunk and branch out over there in the top, you really need to work on the tree so that it acquires that architecture, and you need to get the proper species. So yeah, but you can do that. Usually if like high stratum species, they tolerate full sun, no problem. So they can be the tallest. They don't need an emergent species to the side. So you can have them doing that job.
Okay,
That's
cool.
it.
But yeah,
If we consider that the emergent species occupies, 20% of the area, it means the high species does, bear a lot of sun. So in that case, and
Exactly.
we do tend to have Leucaenas, popping up, and when I kind of do prune them, as I do with the eucalyptus, and that is another species that accepts radical pruning.
yeah.
I know a lot of trees don't appreciate it, and Leucaenas is just amazing. In the same kind of way, and I keep on hearing more positive things about about the nitrogen fixing aspects of it, how it really pumping carbon, nitrogen and things to the soil and things. So it's a great.
Cool.
I don't know how much volume, I don't know how much volume it produces, but it seems to be like quite a lot, because in the rain season you can get quite a lot of cuts from them if that's the way you're going.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, we've just had a hard time finding a good emergent support species that works. Eucalypt, hard to get, and Pachaco we've experimented with, but it seems to need more water than we have. So, and Leucaena just keeps just shining. The Leucaena grows faster than the Pachaco or even the couple of, I don't know. It's just the one that just stands out as like it wants to be growing as much as it can. So that's why it dawned on us. Maybe we can just treat it like an emergent one. So we'll give it a shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely would. What have you guys have any Cassia mungium?
I've looked for it. I remember you recommending that a while ago. That's super interesting to us, and I just can't find seeds or seedlings yet. I mean, we're still looking for them though, so I hope we get more access to more things as we find sources, but we just don't have them quite yet. So.
And what's the deal out there?
You're gonna need a longer lived emergent species though for the future.
Okay.
Something to take into consideration.
Okay.
The probably after 6-7 years you're probably gonna want to be substituting the Leucaena for another. So this is something to bear in mind.
Mm-hmm. Would you agree? Would you agree that at that stage, your emergent species isn't necessarily the primary biomass producer anymore, because it's a little bit more spaced out, it's a little bit taller, it's a little bit less, maybe less accessible, if you see what I'm saying? Because I find that in the early stages, like with the eucalyptus, we have them every 1.5 meters or whatever you can do, but as you 7 years down later, there's fewer species, and then I'm looking at and then you can start looking at the avocados and other things to contribute for the biomass. So I mean, if you have like some noble wood to be your emergent species in the future, where it's not necessarily a biomass producing tree, it's really someone occupying that strata. You think there's some truth in that, Felipe?
No doubt. As the system develops, these biomass, more and more of the fruit trees are going to take part in the biomass production. So we don't need to have these emergent species so close together. And then we actually need to thin them out. Otherwise, they end up overshading too much. One species which might be interesting for you to look at, Jack, is tamarind. Do you know tamarind?
Is it the edible kind? The kind that produces the edible fruit even?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
It's a legume, right? It's a legume with that brown. It's an emergent species, and it's
really?
yeah.
Huh. Okay. I didn't
So
realize
you
it
could
was,
you
it
could
was
be
emergent.
they sprout very nicely by seed. So they are
Hmm.
definitely something for the like the and they're long lived. They will live for many years. So they can be something for you to have as they're also nitrogen fixing. So they're an amazing fruit. They produce a lot. They're great for drier regions. So yeah, that's something I'd look into.
Awesome. Great tip. Thank you. I'll
And
check that one
and
out.
and also uh, the Inga edulis,
Ice
the
cream bean.
ice cream bean. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
Ah,
also nitrogen fixed.
is that more of a high or an emergent? Do you know what strata that would be?
it depends on which
Um,
Inga.
Yeah,
Okay.
again, many
There are many
yeah,
varieties.
species.
I see.
But this
because
one that we're
last week
talking,
I
Inga edulis, it's the one which has the big pods, right, Eric? Like the really long
yeah
pods.
yeah
Yeah, that one
I last
is a
week
high stratum as far
yeah
as I
last
know.
week I was with somebody and I pruned it, and it was about I climbed in the tree, and it was about 9 meters high, but it was a small beans. But you have also long beans, and they are getting very high. I saw trees here about 20-25 meters high.
Wow.
About.
Yeah,
But
Wow.
they grow a lot.
yeah, and
They
maybe
grow a lot.
Madere de cacao glyceridia, maybe
Yeah.
is also a tree to.
Yeah,
Okay. Cool. Awesome. So you mentioned as
you
the
need a
forest
bit more
matures.
of rain though.
Okay. You mentioned as the forest matures, you get more of the biomass from the avocados and the fruit trees or the noble wood trees. What kind of percentage would you expect like a more mature, like let's say like 7 years and on agroforestry system? How much of the biomass would you expect to get from support species versus how much biomass would you expect to get from those like fruit and wood species?
I would actually expect it to be at least 50-50, or maybe even more from the fruit species,
Awesome. Okay.
because you
Cool.
have more species. You have a greater number of species, and they need to be pruned many times a year. So although in one prune you don't get as like if you prune one mango tree, you maybe not going to get as much biomass as if you prune an eucalyptus tree. But the pruning needs to be done more frequently, right? So you have like in a fruit tree, you're going to usually have one main prune in the year after fruiting season. And then you have to do some more cleanups along the way. So actually the amount can be quite huge. The difference though is that you hardly ever get wood from your fruit trees, because since you're constantly pruning them, they never develop very thick branches, right? The thick branches that they do develop, you're going to allow them to be, because they're going to be the structure of the tree. You will get a lot of wood in the process of thinning out the service species. So that's a very beneficial aspect of thinning them out, because as you have a leucaena every meter, let's say, and maybe 4 years down the line or 5 years down the line, you're thinning them out to 30% of the current population. Suddenly you're putting all of these logs on the soil.
Yeah.
But then with fruit trees, not so much. But in cycling, it can be quite a lot. The amount of organic matter that cacao produces is unbelievable in heavily pruned systems. Coffee as well. If you're pruning coffee every year, you can be producing a lot of organic matter. I mean, how many leaves doesn't coffee throw into the soil? Because we got to remember also that the lowest the stratum, the higher the percentage of occupation. So the more biomass, like simultaneous biomass you have, so the more live biomass you have. So imagine doing even a light pruning in a low stratum, you're bringing down a ton of organic matter.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's an exciting phase to get to.
It is, man.
It is.
Um,
I'm kind of appreciating that because
so let's go to the next one.
I got the 6-year-old system.
Now get the next one, man. It's about papaya. You're the papaya king.
All right. Is there a technique for harvesting papaya so the fruits ripens evenly. Our papayas tend to stay green at the top of the fruit, while the bottom of the fruit over ripens. Well, I don't know about a technique to influence even, maturity of the fruit. I mean, what I can say is that, obviously you've been harvesting this and you're eating it, and then you probably feel like, this part's overripe and that one there's no good. What I can say is that, fruit needs to be ripened, in your customer's house, not at the shop, or not, not in the transport, not in the transport to where the sale is going to happen, basically, commercially speaking. So I don't like harvesting green papayas and counting that they will, a lot of people, import papayas and they come all green and then they have to really mature fully. But I love to have that bit of green, just to show that little bit of firmness, so that final green can disappear in the customer's house. But specific to your question about a technique to make it ripen evenly, naturally, obviously, once you've harvested, there's things you can do. You keep it in cardboard boxes and you keep them, you can wrap it up into newspapers and things like that, right? Newspapers are extinct actually. I need so much newspaper for, like, back in the day, like I got a new puppy, I'd have newspaper so you can shit on it. I can't find newspaper anymore. So I can't find newspaper to wrap up.
Newspaper is such a great thing.
Yeah, it's basically extinct now. So you ripen it, through newspaper or through cardboard boxes and things like that. But you do need that bit of green. But is there anything you can add to that, Felipe?
Yeah, sure. Just to explain a bit about the physiology of maturing, like fruit, they have two stages of maturing, right? The first stage, they need to be attached to the plant, right? So if you take the fruit before that, they're never going to reach full maturity. That's what happens, for example, with most banana fruit. People will harvest them before they're full, right? And that they're never going to mature to the same level of sweet, because they didn't finish getting carbohydrates from the plant. Once you're past that stage, then you go into just changes of color and changes of compounds inside the fruit. So that it's like they're not getting anything from the mother anymore. Right? So that's exactly what Gennaro was saying, right? So you want to cut them after they've gone through the first stage of ripening, right? So, but they're still going through the other stage, which happens individually from the mother.
Interesting.
Okay? So these are, and then they're gonna soften the pulp. They're gonna change the color of the skin. They're gonna change the flavor, right? The amount of sugar. So carbohydrates are gonna be converted into sugars. And what makes plants fruit mature is a hormone called ethylene. I think that's how you pronounce it. And it's a gas. Every fruit produces it. Some produce more, some produce less. That's why cardboards work. That's why newspaper works. So because you wrap it up, you prevent the gas from escaping. So you create like this small gas chamber, because the fruit is producing gas. The gas has a harder time escaping. So that makes the maturing happens faster and more homogeneously as well. So covering stuff helps out a lot, so that you will have that ethylene well distributed around all parts of the fruit. So that's going to make the ripening happens more homogeneously. That's what people do with bananas, for example. They harvest the bunches green. They will put it inside a gas chamber, and then they will ripen. almost homogeneously. So this is a little trick that you can
Yeah.
try out.
It's definitely an art to harvesting, you know, harvesting at the right time. And this is
Yeah.
what, you know, here we've kind of got it right. And you can see people, you know, learning through the processes where, you know, harvesting bananas too late, harvesting bananas too early, you know, same thing with the papayas. So it's definitely an art, you know, something for you to feel. Obviously different climates as well. Here, we're not great climate for papayas. So we have a lot of papayas that kind of rot. It's not necessarily immaturity. It's like a rot, you know. I feel it's a little bit cold and, you know, a bit high. But, you know, we're cool with harvesting a level of percentage, you know, because papaya is great feed for birds mainly and other life within the system. So papayas is one of those things that I'm cool. If I harvest 30% of my papayas, that's great because it's such low cost and it's so much added benefit for the other 70% I didn't harvest. It's working in other ways. So it's really selecting those ones that did ripen, like you know, sufficient, you know, adequately. But it is an art, and you got to play with that. And it depends if you're harvesting for yourself or if you're harvesting, you know, so you can sell and someone else can eat in 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a trick with the bananas. If the first one is eaten by the bird, then I know it's because the bird know when it is good to eat. So when the bird is starting to eat, then I harvest the banana.
Yeah.
And that's the easiest way. And is it also possible that the soil is missing something that the papaya doesn't color because I don't have that. When it is orange, it's totally orange. It's not a part of green. But I am in the tropics, very near to the equator, and maybe it's our climate that's excellent for papayas. I don't know, but could it also be possibly something that the soil is missing, or isn't the or the variety, or is that not possible?
For the maturity stages, I don't see how that could influence. You could have less uniform ripening if your plant is deficient, but then you're going to see many other signs of it as well. You know, what could happen is, for example, if the fruit loses connection to the mother at some point before the right time, it might start, but like because of imbalance in nutrients, it might start producing more ethylene, and then it starts ripening some parts of it. Or if it is by any chance damaged by an insect or by wind or whatever it is, which can happen, especially if the plant is not well nourished. Whenever it has like a bruise or something, it might start ripening a part of it before. But I don't think that's the case with Jack's papayas. I think it's just a matter. It is natural for the papaya to start ripening from the bottom up, right? That's the most common thing. Usually, you start with yellow or orange stripes, right? From the bottom, they come, you know, like 4 or 5 stripes, and then they start taking color around. That's usually when I harvest papayas. When I see the first sign of a yellow stripe, first time, that means it's already going into the second stage, so it doesn't need to be attached to the mother anymore. And same thing with bananas that Eric mentioned, the thing of the bird, that's a perfect good indicator. But also even before the birds, if you start seeing the first banana turning yellow, you can already harvest it. That's especially important if you're going to send it to, you know, if you're going to have to transport it during a couple of days, I don't know, if you're not going to ship it directly. In hot climates, the bananas, after you harvest them, they can start maturing very quickly, like if it's too hot, like from one day to the other. And depending on the variety you have, they're going to start detaching from the hand, and that's just a very horrible thing. And it's basically you lose you lose the bananas if that starts happening before
Yeah,
they get to the customers. So yeah.
I personally, for many years, I used the bird technique. It's great. I feel like on a commercial level, we should be like a little bit more, trained to be, and because you get enough
A little bit before.
a little bit before, 2 days before, because it's good to go. 2 days before the bird eats it, it's good to go, and I get more shelf life and transport and things like that. Because once it starts
Exactly.
ripening, everything starts, because I might need this banana, I might need to, let people know that I've got this banana, and then by the time I've actually gone there and delivered it and things like that, So
maybe you're gonna sell it throughout like a week. Maybe it's gonna take like 7 days, 10 days for you to sell the whole bunch, right? So you
Exactly.
can like ship them as they mature, as they ripen. So that's
Yeah, so it is an art. You get the hang of it by trial and error. And as we were on,
cool.
they kind of love ash and potassium and things like that. They appreciate that as well. Sometimes you want to give them something
Definitely.
extra.
Okay, cool.
So
Thank you.
next question, Jack asked, that's a good question, man. What are the characteristics of a healthy forest versus those of a degraded one? Like he's talking not of an agroforestry system, but a natural forest without human management. Great question. So there are a few things that are worth looking into. One is the state of the older trees in the forest. I'm going to give the example of a forest that I have here in the farm. It looks like a forest, like a well-managed forest, but when you go into it, you see that most trees, and I mean most, like 98% of them, of the big ones, they are attacked by termites. All of them have a huge termite mound on top. Like they are constantly falling all the time. So you can see that it is in a process of dying. And there's not much natural regeneration. So you don't see so many young trees of those sprouting. You start seeing trees that do not belong to that type of forest. You start seeing species from a state of succession which precedes that one. So that's a sign. Trees with a lot of dead branches, or trees that are like with small leaves, trees that are just growing in bunches instead of growing in in a linear trunk. Many people think that there are species that it's natural for them to grow in bunches, but that's actually very rare, and that's a sign of a tree that's been cut at least once, that it's been cut, and so it resprouts like that. Of course, there are species which are more prone to do that than others. But these are, a few signs. Many people think that organic matter is a good indicator, but that's not necessarily true. Because there is no, what can I say? Like there is no standard measure for how much organic matter the forest soil should have. That's going to depend a lot on the kind of soil you have. Like the more acidic the soil is naturally, the more organic matter it's going to accumulate. So you could have a very healthy forest in an amazing soil, and it would not accumulate a lot of organic matter. So that's something to remember. Many times a soil with a lot of organic matter in a forest, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good thing. It just might mean that the soil is very acidic, so or maybe that it doesn't rain so much in the place, so the organic matter doesn't decompose so quickly, right? What I look for is like the state of individual trees. If most of them are dying with dead branches, if they can't sustain themselves properly, and if I see species coming from a stage of succession which comes before, that's a clear sign of a decaying forest. On the other hand, a healthy forest, you will see big trees healthy. Like you're not going to see decaying trees. Like the largest trees in the systems, they will be healthy. And you're going to have, of course, you don't usually have stratification the way we do it, because for us to have perfect strata, it requires human work for us to have that perfect stratum. So in forests, even healthy ones, it is common for the upper stratums to kind of dominate, and for you to have a bit less of lower stratum plants. So that's not necessarily a sign that it's unhealthy. If you don't have so much low stratum, that might happen naturally. So I think that's about it. That's what my take.
Yeah. Well, one of the first things Felipe mentioned, what comes to me, just in other words, seeing those emergent trees, and unfortunately we see it more often than not when we look in the horizon, and we can see emergent trees every so often, and they're all dying.
Yeah, that's a
the bigger trees, the emergent trees, and you can see they're all saying goodbye. And like Felipe said, you don't see them being replaced. You don't see that variety, a new one popping through or anything like that. It's like their time is gone. These 200-year-old trees, they're all dying, and we can be sure that there's no 200-year-old trees to be coming up here, because we're taking backward steps. And it's everywhere you go, everywhere you look, you can notice this. The emergent trees, they're saying goodbye.
Exactly.
And you can't see them being replaced. See, there's no tree that you look at and you think, it's going to be here in 200 years from now. So you can't see how that's going to recuperate. It's very sad to see.
So is there any role for grass anywhere in a healthy forest?
What?
Is there any role for grass anywhere in a healthy forest, or is grass just too far back in the successional stages to make sense in a forest?
Not at all. Grass is a natural plant in the system. Of course, depending on the type of forest you have, when you get to more advanced stages, grass is going to disappear, because, like I said, usually the overstory is going to kind of take over. If you don't have periodical disturbances, the overstory takes over.
Yeah.
And then the understory kind of doesn't have enough sunlight to continue. But grass will come in whenever you have clearings in the forests or in the borders, or when you go to drier climates, they might be more present, because you have a larger amplitude of sunlight coming in, during the dry season, so you get a bit more sunlight, usually in dry areas also. Even when the trees have their leaves on, the canopies are usually a bit thinner. They're not so dense as in a rainforest. So, and then there are other kinds of grasses as well, not only like regular grasses for cows. There's bamboos. Bamboos are grasses as well.
Okay.
From very lush forests. When you go to, bamboos are quite common. Whenever you have a bit of a clearing, or you're going to have, bamboos growing, and also other types of grasses. When you get closer to river banks, you usually get a bit more of sunlight. So usually the like close to the rivers, you're going to have some grasses or others growing. And of course, there are the abundance grasses, which are like bamboo, sugarcane, elephant grass, which grow by the river banks in the borders of the forest. So they wouldn't grow inside the forest, but these species from other succession stages, they usually colonize the borders of the forest.
Cool. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
So now Eric asked 3 questions. He says, my pineapple plants grow very long leaves. Does it harm the plant if only the very long leaves are pruned back so that I can walk through the plants? Not really. I mean, you're losing leaf area. the plant will feel a little bit. That is not to say that you're going to see a big decrease in production. Just make sure you do clean cuts. You know, pineapple leaves, they can tear very easily. So you need to cut them with a very sharp tool so that you don't have them tearing apart, because then that's a big problem. But I have to do that constantly, you know, just kind of cutting some leaf tips. But also in pineapple plantations, man, I'm always with so that I can walk through the plantation without a problem because of pricks. But yeah, just light pruning shouldn't hurt the plants too much. Just make sure it's with a sharp tool. He also asked a couple of questions about coconut husk. So I can get a lot of about coconuts. I can get a lot of coconuts for free from a friend who make coconut oil. The husk I want to use in the pathways between the beds. Although it's not growing on my plot and comes from outside, is the value of the husk the same as if you grow the coconut by yourself? Sorry, man, I don't get the question. Are you asking if putting the husk on the soil is the same as having the coconut tree?
Yeah, what I meant is if I get it from outside, and it doesn't have. I sometimes I hear Gennaro talking about it doesn't have the memory or the DNA from my ground. So but that's because I bring it from outside. So but I don't know if there's a difference if you. Yeah, I don't know exactly how to say that, but okay.
No,
maybe
I got it. Now I understood the question.
Yeah.
There's no difference as long as it's not contaminated with antibiotics or anything that could damage your soil with chemicals. There's not going to be any difference. The only difference between bringing material from outside and producing it inside is that when you're producing material inside your plot, besides the material that you're putting on the soil, you also have the plant, the live plant that's working the soil as well, you know. But for the organic matter that you're putting in the soil, it doesn't make much of a difference.
Okay.
It might have some difference in chemical composition depending on which growing conditions the plant has. So, you know, a plant that grew in a healthier soil might have a better balance of nutrients and all that, but it doesn't make much of a difference. I can assure you that the microorganisms that are decomposing that, they don't know where it came from. They're going to decompose it just the same.
Yes. Okay.
I mean, the only other thing I can think of as well, I mean, the humidity level might drop a little bit, you know, but, you know, it's positive you bring in material in if it's material you trust.
What do you mean the humidity level might drop?
I mean, if the things that you chop and drop, you know, you're actually mulching, you know, that it's fresh, there's more water. Sometimes if you bring in this from the outside, it comes in already, you know, with...
Okay, already dry, sure.
Yeah.
But I thought about the coconut husk is a very very much absorb water, so it's
it absorbs water.
I am in a dry region of the country, and for me it's very useful, I think, but I don't know for sure. But,
no, coconut husk is amazing, and already answering your third question where you asked what's the advantages of using coconut husk. Everything that you get from organic matter, they have a very large quantity of carbon, so they take a very long time to break down. Yeah. And once they start breaking down, you can see that they're inside. It's like a sponge. That becomes amazing soil. Just for you to have an idea, most companies that do starting mix for seedlings, coconut husk is one of the bases of their of the material, because it's just so amazing in terms of how much water it retains without getting water clogged, you know. So it retains a lot of water, but it also drains freely. So it is an amazing material. It's one of the best materials. Here in Brazil, they have coconut husks shredders, so that people can exactly do that. You know, so they will shred it and then apply it to the soil or produce these mixes. But you can apply it directly in the soil as well, no problem, and it's an amazing material.
Okay.
Just on a side thought, probably doesn't apply to you, Eric. You know, when you bring in material in, sometimes this is the opportunity to use, you know, say you're doing some composting, or you even have bedding for animals, you know, because the chop and drop stuff that's locally, that's ideal. You chop and you drop. You're not having to cut this, and it's a bit of a nuisance to, you know, to be carrying things. Sometimes you're bringing it from external, and then, you know, the truck delivers it there, and then you've got to manually take this to where it needs to be and things like that. So when external material comes in, that's an opportunity to use that material, you know, for bedding, for animal bedding, so it can be enriched with manure before it goes to the system. Or if you're into, you know, composting, you know, I'm just thinking logistically, you know, the material's coming in from the outside already. You've received this material, you know, rather than, you know, having to take something from the system to shred it and make bedding for animals, or take something from the system, you know, to take to a compost pile. That kind of stuff makes no sense at all. But if materials come in externally, it's when you can, you know, enrich in this material in other ways, use it in the farm, you know, for other processes, you know. It's just a side thought. It's what we tend to do, because
definitely.
Eventually I get like truckloads of, you know, shredded stuff, and then, you know, I take the opportunity, since it's already outside the system, I'm not having to carry it from the system to outside, to, you know, to use it for whatever other processes I might want to put materials through. So that's just another thought.
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
Makes it a lot more efficiency like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And also one interesting thing about coconut husks, especially, they're very rich in minerals, because coconuts, because they live in the sea, I mean, close to the sea, they don't live in the sea. But it's a very rich environment in terms of minerals, which usually lack in high rainfall areas because of bleaching, right? The sea is just full of every mineral you can think of. So that's just another interesting thing about it. Okay, Benjamin Sakamoto asked, he said, hello guys, I'm currently studying environmental science to introduce syntropic agroforestry into the programs of reforestation and rehabilitation of degraded areas here in Australia, and would love to hear what is your view of applying agroforestry for restoration. What is the approach considering management, labor, and species to choose? What would be the reach of extension of this kind of project? Just wonder your thoughts and different perspective of it. He complimented below, in the concept of that would not be always motivated under a food production for humans, but would create abundance for bring back wildlife as well. That's a pretty interesting question. And do you want to say something about that, Janelle, to start off? I can compliment.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about restoration, you know, I like taking it, you know, step by step. You know, it's a very complex question, but it's just what comes to me initially. You know, if I'm talking about restoration, sometimes that soil is not prepared to receive, you know, the species that, you know, that would form a forest as such. So initially, something I've learned through trial and error, you know, is prepare the soil to receive the seeds. You know, that might, you know, if you're working, you know, with very, very low amount of external inputs and irrigation and things like that, often it might take a couple of years for you to prepare that soil so that you can actually, you know, maybe hope for more demanding trees to eventually, you know, come to that spot. So I mean, the approach, I would often use, a lot of, these legumes, these black velvet beans and Mexican sunflowers, for example, in our climate, and then come back in a couple of years, and then start talking about seed bombs and things like that, and other. Something interesting as well is like we tend to plant the forest that we know that can eventually live here, but because it's degraded soils, we really should look at a lot of the native species, right? I appreciate that he's being specific about that. It's not necessarily a food production system, and it's something native for the wildlife, but that gets overseen quite often, because if we're planting in agroforestry systems, which we initiate them with vegetable production with high inputs initially, and then we can introduce already high demanding trees, that will slowly creep in and form that longer term forest. But people, if we're in the savannah, people don't often plant many savanna species. They were looking for more abundant plants that are from a more abundant stage, already looking at where they want to get to. But that that walk needs to be step by step. So you can plant by seed a lot of the native species and a lot of biomass producing, and make a big mess, and I'll come back a couple of years later to plant the species that would actually form an abundant forest. It's not like, that's not a literal answer. It's not literally, but it's just some thoughts on that topic there.
Cool. Yeah, basically, when you're working with the sole purpose of regenerating vegetation, and you don't have to produce food for humans, it actually makes things a whole lot easier, because the demanding species are the fruit and the grains and the stuff that we eat. They're a lot more demanding than other species. So just think of it as doing an agroforestry system with service species only, right? That's the like the easiest way to work, because you don't need much for these species to establish themselves. And in many cases, the important thing is to just establish an initial vegetation so that the wildlife can take care of the rest. We don't have to worry about making sure all of the species have established themselves, like all the species that we want them, because other species are going to come as soon as the environment starts getting a bit better. So there are two main techniques, or maybe three, which need to be added to conventional reforestation activities. One is planting by seed, whatever species you want to plant, which is not usually done. People usually plant by seedling, right? But planting by seed it's cheaper, and you have a higher rate of actually, that's not precisely what I mean. You don't have a higher rate of established plants, but you get you spend less money for each established plant. That's what I want to say. Because you can just plant a lot of seeds, and of course, not all of them are going to become adult trees. But when you plant a seedling, if that seedling doesn't survive, that's it. You lost a lot of money there. So planting by seed, using the idea of succession, which people don't use. So for example, using stuff like pigeon pea, jack beans, now I talked about the black velvet beans, using the grasses as an ally instead of trying to fight them, which is what usually happens. I've worked in reforestation projects, and they would use glyphosate to kill the grasses so that their seedlings could survive. That's just it's plain stupid. It doesn't make any sense if you're trying to regenerate an ecosystem. So you can just use the grass to feed the trees. If you do one or two cuts in the grass to feed a row of trees, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You know, once the trees are well established, then you don't have to worry about, you know, keep mowing the grasses. You just do it once or twice. So, you know, managing the current vegetation, planting seed, using succession, so that you have, and of course, you're not going to plant corn and regular beans, because, you know, usually these projects are really big. You're not going to, it becomes very expensive if you're using that sort of species. But use the like those hardcore ones, such as jack beans and all sorts of legumes and grasses that grow in the area. Last thing, I said there were 3, right? So planting by seed, using succession, and I don't know if there's anything else. I think that's it. And just thinking about regenerating to just to kickstart the process so that wildlife can come in and start doing the work. You know, that's what I have to say about it.
Yo, can we take a minute here and say hello to our friend here? What's up? We're getting to know you now. RC, yeah? Sorry, I know this is a Q&A, but if you'd like to come on and say hello and where you're from, and because we just love to get to know you guys. And what's up?
What's up? What's up? Yeah, sure. Sorry, I'm late. I thought it was at just an hour behind you guys, but I guess I'm 2 hours, so I guess an hour late. But no, my name is Russell Can, and I live in Jamundí, Valle Cauca, Colombia, on the Pacific coast of, no, not on the coast, but in the Pacific region of Colombia. Here, you know, we probably get 3,500 mils of rain a year. It rains almost every day, so it's a much different biome than you guys, and a lot of different challenges as well. But it's been great learning from you guys. I'm glad I finally got to get on, you know, the Patreon, and you guys do some great work. And I'm actually, I'll just tell you real quick. I don't know if you already went through my question. I completely spaced. I thought it was only 1 hour behind, but
No,
I'm going to establish. I have this a new project. That's great. That's great news. That's great news. But I'm going to establish like a 5,000 square meter, a half hectare system, just pure commercial, closer to the town. And I want to do it like you guys do, just because I'm going to be able to bring in a lot more inputs to get the system rolling, and it's going to be much more idea to kind of get the commercial production very quickly. So I'm so happy to be here, and I just want to say, you know, thanks for all that you guys have done. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Russell.
Cool, man. Great to meet you.
Yeah, I've seen you around. I don't know if it's in the questions or in Facebook, you know, but yeah, recognize, you know, yeah, you're now on the Patreon, but I've seen you around for quite a while now. Is that right?
Yeah, we've I've been at this farm about 4 years, and I've been working. I do a lot of successional, just zero input successional agroforestry here, and a lot of a natural management of natural regeneration to get to that. Just because the land's so degraded, it's been, you know, maybe 40 years of really intense cattle, and in here, when you're in the humid tropics, that just means that you get all the nutrients just lixiviate, you know, they just wash away, and you just get super heavy compacted clay. So you gotta use the natural regeneration to get it going fast. But you know, you guys have a beautiful farm out there, and you know, I've been trying to learn as much as possible from you guys, and then try and apply it here. You know, also it's, you know, we're at like probably 50 to 70 or 80% slopes as well, so it's a very different space.
Very slopey.
But yeah, we've been trying to learn from what y'all been doing down there, and trying to apply up here.
That's great, man. This is interesting. We're all right now, everybody in South America. Eh? So we've got people from many places in South America, right? So You're in Colombia, we're here in Brazil. Jack's over there in Ecuador. Eric's in Suriname. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Nice.
And now you've got Colombia in the house.
All
Nice,
right,
man.
cool. Keep us
A
posted.
lot
on
of
the
rain that you
development
get
there.
over there. Lots of rain. I'm impressed. 3,500 millimeters. That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it's a
Pretty
lot of rain.
intense.
You know, probably almost every day. We get like maybe, you know, a 3-week, maximum 3-week dry period twice a year, more or less. And the rest is just, you know, rain almost every single day, man. It
You must have
yeah,
a hard
it has
time
different
drying your
challenges.
clothes.
Yeah, well, you know, the advantage, you know, that sun just comes in and just, you know, anything you can you know, if you don't have good forest cover, it just even 2 days without rain, the sun just sucks you know, all the humidity out of everything, you know. And it's funny because what you're saying about the grass is that here I've had the opposite experience. At first, I tried to do, you know, like more of a commercial, more like a traditional reforestation type deal, you know, taking the, you know, you get the seedlings in the bags and you go out and plant out, you know, every 3 meters or whatever. And man, with this much rain, the grass, it just it's unstoppable. You know, you can't, and you can't really go in and with the weed eater because you end up just cutting down the trees anyway. It's been a whole adventure to figure out.
What has
this,
to be
but,
done in these situations is, this is good because we were talking about that question. Like, if you're going to manage grass, you need to have at least like 1.2, 1.5 meters without grass, and the trees in the middle, and a well mulched system, which you're going to feed. Like the trees, they need to be inside mulch, and we got to use stuff like pigeon pea, jack beans, like fast growing legumes, which will kind of shade out and, you know, reduce that fast growth of the grass that will go into the seedlings. That's the strategy I like to use, so that the grass doesn't constantly come in.
Yeah.
But it definitely makes it a lot harder
Yeah.
when the grass is growing so insane like that. You need to cut it like 6, 7, 8, 12 times a year or something like that.
Yeah. Again, I mean,
Another
it's
possibility
crazy.
is to use animals. Now then you've got your grass cutter, and we can do like electric fencing. These high rainfall areas are the best for electric fencing. So, you know, you get your animals to cut all of the grass for you, protect the row of trees with lines, and there you go. It's also something interesting to experiment with.
yeah, I can appreciate your experience there and what you're saying about, you know, the vigorous grass with the high rain, but, you know, and about cutting seedlings back accidentally. You know, this is why we organize things into lines. You plant them into lines, you organize them into lines, and I mean, you know, it's different processes, you know, different times of different beliefs, but I've come to appreciate, you know, the abundance of say grass, vigorous, of the Mexican sunflowers, and I now no longer fear that, you know, because it's just, you know, if it's abundant, it means, you know, you got that power of mulch for that seedling there, you know, so it should really help you protect the seedling since it's so abundant, you know. You do have to have an initial abundant mulch, and then, you know, it is a case of you know, what, you know, a few cuts to reinforce that, and then, you know, your trees will be gone. It's just really like to beat grass, use grass to kill grass, you know, use grass to kill grass. I know it's something that we've been saying and everyone understands. It's really basic, you know, use grass to kill grass, but, you know, the more abundant it is, the easier it is to kill it on the tree row, because there's more material, you know, and to consolidate that tree row's worth of mulch. So, you know, we envy your situation with the high popo grass. You know, organize the system into lines so you can, you know, chop that with no fear and make that work for you beautifully.
Absolutely. I've actually I've been using I saw you guys use a lot of you know, the elephant grass, the Napier grass. Here they call it the king grass, and that's use the grass to kill grass. You know, that's what I've been the new thing I've been doing in the last 6 months has been one line of elephant grass. You know, every 30 centimeters. You know, really dense, and then you know, 50 centimeters another line of Grisea and you know, the Mexican sunflower and a couple other native trees we got here. And I've been finally been getting some results because the king grass will eventually, you know, shade out the brachiaria.
Yeah, nice.
Because the brachiaria, man, I'll tell you, yeah, with this much rain, it will just eat anything.
Nice.
And it's good, you know, it's better to have more photosynthesis than less, you know.
I'm pretty sure I've seen you in Facebook, right? We link up on Facebook, right?
Yeah, I've been around. I've been around for a little bit on.
Yeah. I've seen. I know your
group.
systems. They're very prosperous. They look very abundant. Congratulations on that.
We're trying. Yeah, we're trying. You know, it's a learning curve. You know.
You guys do a bit of coffee out there, right?
Yeah. We got here. I'm in the process of going to Syntropic on you know, maybe almost 2 hectares of coffee. And another, I'm working right now on arasa. I think you guys have arasa out there too, right? The yellow, it's like a big, a really sour yellow fruit.
Yeah,
you know,
the ones we have here, they're not so big. I think the one you're talking about is what we call arasa boy, which is like a big one, sour. But we've got other types of arasa, which they're like small guavas, very small guavas, delicious guavas, much better than guavas, by the way. Yeah, much better than guavas.
Okay.
Much more sophisticated taste, actually.
Okay.
And but then we have this one which is called arasa boy, which is kind of big, like this big yellow, very sour one. I think that's the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's really good cash crop here. People love to drink it with milk, and it cuts the milk. It turns into like a yogurt. I don't know if y'all drink it down there like that, but
wow,
we make some. It's a good money maker for us.
Nice.
But yeah, man. Great job, you guys. And so, do you think we'll get a chance to talk about the spacing on the
Yeah, we're gonna get to your question
today, or
yeah.
We're gonna get to your
awesome,
question.
man, awesome.
There's
I've been waiting. All right.
Let's get cracking.
There's just 2 questions before. Next question was asked
right,
by
man.
our
Do it
friend
up.
Antonio
I'll shut up.
From Spain, our buddy Antonio Hache. He said, besides seed cocktails, muvucas, do you have some system for in-house tree propagation, nursery beds, or whatsoever? I'm thinking that in order to work further plots on the property, it would be better if I could strategically propagate my own trees. Well, when you're talking about seedling production, and seedlings do have its, they do have their place. I published a video about using D-pots, which are no doubt the best method for producing seedlings. Right? Usually produce seedlings either in like nursery beds, like Antonio said, and then you transplant the seedling directly from the soil. That's the cheapest way to produce the seedling, but it's the worst quality seedling you're going to have because the plant will suffer a lot during the transplant. Not every species accepts that sort of harsh transplanting. Some do, but some don't. Then you've got the conventional plastic bags, but the conventional plastic bags, they have a bit of some problems. The first one is the thing of the root wrapping in the bottom of the bag. Also, the amount of soil mix that you need to fill up a bag is quite a lot compared to a D-pot. So the D-pot, You use less soil mix. You have a better root system. You have an easier to carry seedling. You can carry like 60 in both hands. And so, you know, if you're going to produce seedlings, definitely try to grab some deep pots and, you know, build a nice nursery. This is also important to have a good infrastructure for seedling production, you know, with plastic and nursery screen, so that you don't get rain inside. You want to have like those foggy aspersion systems. I mean, sprinkler systems, like foggy sprinkler systems. I don't know how you guys call it in English. And yeah, decent infrastructure and a good soil stock mix. That's the secret. The soil mix is the X of the equation, as we say here in Brazil. That's one of the most important variables, which you need to have a good starting mix. And you can produce your own, but it's usually just better to buy a good one, you know, from a reliable brand with a good soil starting mix for you to produce your seedlings. Don't fall into the trap of just getting soil and filling up your deep pots. Just, you know, use good soil stock mix. That's what I have to say about producing seedlings.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have a system to produce seedlings, but we know when you would, right? Sometimes you've got that seed that doesn't store very well, but it's not the right time of year for you to plant. So sometimes you put them into pots so you can, you know, have that specific gene. You know, sometimes you've been given by your friend a cutting or a seed or something, or a seedling. More often than not, seeds and things like that. Like for me now, my avocados, my latest avocado varieties, which I would love to plant, they come pretty late. And by that point already, we're initiating the drought. So, you know, if it's not irrigated, you know, one would consider, you know, making seedlings out of this. I personally don't do that. I actually would rather plant in the drought and irrigate that manually. You know, look forward to that labor throughout the drought of irrigating it. That's how much I appreciate, you know, planting directly. You know, but this is often when you would make a seedling. If you have something, it's not the right time of year for you to plant it, but you know, it's an opportunity. You don't want to miss that gene. So you might want to put that in a pot so that when the right time comes around, you know, right time of year, you're ready to plant that. So sometimes, you know, to store that seed in like a live state, if that seed doesn't have that kind of, you know, sell by date kind of thing, if you see what I'm saying.
Cool. That's that, Antonio. Next one, it's a question that came from India, from Priyanka Patel. The question is, how does one approach diversifying existing eucalyptus monocultures planted quite densely? For context, the site is in South India in a tropical wet and dry savanna climate zone. I won't be able to make it to the call since it'll be the middle of the night, but look forward to the recording. Thank you. You can approach it in a variety of ways. They're all going to involve thinning out the eucalyptus and then planting other stuff in the middle. This thinning out could come along with top pruning the remaining eucalyptus or not, depending on the size of the trees and depending on what you want to introduce in the middle, right? So, for example, you could thin them out in a way to leave a pretty wide distance between rows of eucalyptus, you know, as wide as they're tall. So let's say I have a monoculture of 20 meters tall eucalyptus, and it's impossible to prune them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to thin them out, leaving rows every 20 meters, right? So it's the same height as they are. And then you're free to implement your systems in between that, right? If they're still at a manageable height, then you can, let's say you prune them back to 6 meters, and then you can prune them like we show you, radical pruning and all that, and then you thin out the rest of the rows, and then you can leave rows every 6 or 5 or 7 meters or whatever you want of eucalyptus, and you plant your system in the middle of those thinned out and heavily pruned eucalyptus. So that's a couple of different approaches that you could take. Of course, one is going to involve a lot more of thinning out if you have to do this very wide spacing, but it would work out pretty nice, and you would have a bucket load of organic matter to use in your starting system. That's how I would go about it.
Yeah, I appreciate that system, 20 meters wide, because just to think, you know, if you're planting new trees, you want that resprouting information. You want, you know, that information of juvenile shoots. So I'm fond of, you know, bringing down, you know, vast amounts of it and having it all new information, new hormones, new growing stimulation, like more than not. And consider if you're going to prune it, that's quite a lot of, even though thinning it out 20 meters, there's some work to be done there, but also pruning it at 6 meters as well. There's a lot of work involved in that as well. So it kind of
it depends on the age of the plantation, right? That's going to be a major factor. If you're talking about an old plantation of like 10 years old, that's going to be a completely different thing than if you're talking about like a 2 years old plantation where trees are like 5 meters tall, 6 meters tall, depending on the situation.
Don't be shy, basically. I mean, we spoke about it. You know, Felipe suggested an option of up to 20 meters, you know.
No, not up to 20 meters. I'm saying as wide as the height. So if you have 40 meters tall eucalyptus, you're going to do 40 meters wide distance between rows, you know.
Nice.
The taller the tree is, the wider it has to be the spacing, so that you have a clearing in the forest. That's the idea. Cool.
I'd love to be in that situation, you know, like you know, have an eucalyptus forest to bring down, or like I love to see them bananas, monocultural, where I just be like, oh, this is so mouth-watering just to bring it all down.
Yeah.
But people seeing a problem, I'm seeing, you know, right, I'll have it. Thank you very much. And just bring it all down and enriching the system. That'll be great.
Cool. All right, Russell, let's get to your question, man. So Russell asked, what spacing do you use for the citrus and guanabana system? And what would you recommend for an avocado or mango production system? Do you have any experience in working with Inga as an alternative for eucalypt? Does a line of service trees in between the fruit tree lines have any advantages as opposed to planting in the service trees in with the production lines? Thanks. All right, so let's tackle those one by one. Gennaro, we want to start with that citrus and guanabana, since that's what you have those systems in your house. Talk a bit about the spacing that you're using.
Yeah, you know, we're talking about, you know, conventional spacing. You know, I would appreciate, you know, 4x4, because, you know, I mean, 4 in line, because we tend to have things in the middle anyway. So, you know, we're talking about fruit trees, you know, you can follow the conventional guidelines and, you know, fill things in, you know, I wouldn't, you know, necessarily highly dense them, because obviously we're talking about having other stratas, you know, on top and underneath. So I'm not sure, you know, I've got the citrus and guanabana on the same row. I'm not sure I would have done that again, because, you know, they do occupy the same strata. So it's not like I can fit more trees in, you know, because I have them, you know. I appreciate the guanabana could reach, you know, could be like a high, like a medium high, and certain citruses could be medium high, but they could be medium low as well. But we would like to, you know, skip strata. So you'll have your, you know, medium stratas with your emergent, and maybe your low stratas with your high. You want to have a medium with a high together. follow the conventional spacing, but linking that with, I think, what was the last one, advantages, I suppose, in planting the tree service. Let's start that again. Does a line of service trees in between the fruit tree lines have an advantage as opposed to planting the service trees with the production line? So in this case, I would say yes, because then you can have, those higher or those emergent trees. You could have like a high tree on another row, so it's not clashing so much with these medium high trees. So, so I do appreciate planting service trees in between fruit tree lines, just to give them a little bit more space, and so things can be less crumpled. With cases of like guanabanas and citrus, eucalyptus and emergent trees work really well because it goes all the way up. But high level trees would kind of clash with these varieties in the same line.
Yeah, let me jump in here just to kind of make that idea concrete. The idea is that what Gennaro said, just like when you have a main crop, whatever it is, you're going to go for the conventional spacing of that main crop, right? And then you're going to fill in with the other species. And of course, for citrus, it's going to depend a lot on variety. So, there are varieties of citrus that we're planting here at 7 by 2.5. There are varieties which are going to be planted by, 6 by 3, 4 by 4, like Gennaro said. It's very important to know what variety it is, what sort of rootstock it's being used. So just follow the local guidelines for that variety. Same thing for mango and avocado. Depending on varieties, depending on intensive, like how intensive the management is. I've seen avocados at 4 by 2.5, which is just ridiculous dense. But then it's like heavily pruned every year. And then of course you have a lower yield per plant, but then you have higher yield in the area. It makes it a bit harder to consortiate with low stratum species because then you don't have so much space. So all of this has to be taken into consideration. And also what type of, like, is it a mechanized system? If you go in with tractors in between the rows, you need to take that into consideration as well. So if I'm using a tractor, we should be you should be like choosing the distance between rows in accordance to the size of the implements of the tractors. So maybe if I have a bush hog that's like 1.5 meters wide, I'm going to choose a spacing that is a multiple of 1.5 so that I know that I can go maybe like I do one time, two times coming back, and then 3 times, and I mow all of the grass in between the rows, for example, right? So that I just to optimize the work of the machinery. So that's an important thing. And then we go into this thing of having the service trees in between. It's going to work great, like Gennaro said, for you to have species that need a bit more space because they're too close to the stratum. But then when you're working with machinery, it might be impossible to do that, logistically speaking. Maybe not. For some spacings, you might be able to fit in a thin row over there, and it's not going to make a difference. But the machinery you're using needs to be taken into account when you're adding this extra row. For manual systems, then by all means, it's great. So for example, if you're doing your citrus at 7 by 2.5, for example, which is the spacing that I'm working with some people on the farm here. If it's all manual, you can definitely fit in an emergent or a row of high stratum species there in the middle to be producing a bit more organic matter, just to be heavily pruned like 2-3 times a year. That should work out pretty nicely. As for the Inga as an alternative for eucalyptus, we actually talked a bit about Inga in the beginning. Eric was suggesting Inga as a species. It works nice. It's not an emergent species. Most of the Inga species, they're more like high or medium stratum, depending on the species of Inga. But it's prune friendly. It's resprouts okay to pruning. It doesn't produce as much organic matter as eucalyptus. In my experience, I've never seen it producing as much. But some species, they produce a pretty significant amount. And of course, they fix nitrogen, which is a bonus. So definitely, it is a very interesting species to have in the systems, no doubt.
Yeah, check
grows
out the
very
beginning.
fast, so it's pretty cool.
Check out the recording of the video initial. We spoke quite a bit about this through Jack's question, you know, and leucaenas and things like that as well. What I can say is that I do have avocados one tree row away from my guanabanas and citrus, and we're talking about 5.5 meters away, maybe even 6 meters, and it's beautiful. You know, it's beautiful. The avocados 5.5 meters away from the citrus row or the guanabana row works. I can't see it working, you know, the avocados with the citrus and with the guanabanas, because, you know, if you've got your conventional spacing for the guanabanas and then where you're going to put your avocados, it's not going to fit in between in a different strata. It's going to clash. But, you know, avocados, citrus, inga, avocados, citrus, inga, that's tried and tested here, and it works really well, that kind of spacing. You know, if you're in a row about 5.5 meters away, that's enough. So you cool with that, Russell? You're here, you can chat to us now.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it sounds great. I've been rewatching y'all's the original videos that you came out with, and I finally realized, because I hear people don't use a lot of eucalyptus, and we have some eucalyptus on the farm. They're probably, you know, 30 meters, and they just grew and grew and grew. You know, nobody pruned them or anything. But the eucalyptus is so nice because it gives you all that biomass in a place where you're not producing any fruit. You know, it doesn't compete with anything, and you can just produce all that incredible amount of biomass above the whole system, and then leave the space for the fruit. So I'm going to try and get some eucalypts, but the Inga is nice just because you just take that seed. And I've been a couple weeks ago, I made some seed balls with a eucalypt, just because the seed's so like a dust, you know, and it's hard to direct seed. And when you have such crazy slopes, you can't. It doesn't make sense to, you know, be lugging around, you know, the bags and everything. It's too much. It's too much labor, you know. But yeah, thank you so much. And I was wondering, the guanabana. Do you also have the guanabana, you know, like say like 9x9 or something, and then have the citrus in between, or you have the guanabana also at a commercial density, and then all together with the citrus at a commercial density?
I would leave it for separate rows, right? I'd have a row of citrus and then a row of the guanabanas. Yeah, and you're right. It's a bit of a nuisance to direct seed eucalyptus. We tend to work with a lot of clones and cuttings and other, you know, because there are commercial plantations around, so we have facility with those seedlings. Yeah.
Yeah, but you just got to work with, you know, what you have. And yeah,
You know
I think the Inga's gonna.
Go on.
The Inga will compete a little bit, right? Because it doesn't get up as high as much as the eucalyptus.
Yeah, but then again, it's not so dense. So I've seen some beautiful Ingas growing between my citrus and the guanabanas. because, you know, the architecture of it, it's not dense. You know, it's like if you see a citrus tree, it actually, you know, creates that kind of canopy where it's actually kind of round. Where the Inga, it's just kind of like, you know, it kind of, you know, the leaves kind of go over that.
That's a good point.
Pop up and kind of go over that. You know, it's not like a round canopy, is it? Like the citrus is.
Yeah.
You know, so it does fit because it kind of comes in thin and kind of over it like that. It's just that, and it's not dense, so it's just a little bit of half shade. So interestingly enough, I've loved the Ingas in the system with the guanabanas and the citrus because it's not dense, and like I said, it tends to just pop over and then kind of just a few branches. So I don't really see it as like an organic matter producer because it's just because in our climate here we've got, you know, other champions, you know, other real vigorous plants. You know, I appreciate the fruit more than anything, and you know, obviously the nitrogen fixing aspects, you know, the root stocks and all of that. But it doesn't clash because of the architecture of the tree. So I'm not worried, and it sprouts really nice from seed as well, doesn't it? So yeah, so just pop them seeds in. It's great. And I was going to mention about, you know, your 30-meter tall eucalyptus.
Okay, good.
You know, if you bring them down, you know, you make good use of the wood, you know, bring them down completely, and then you'll be surprised how quick the resprout is, you know, when it's got all that adult root stock. So I had this row of like 40 up to even 50 meters tall eucalyptus, and you know, there's like 40 of them, and you know, I bought 30 of them down, these large trees. Felipe was here. So when I actually met Felipe, I think I might have seen him once or twice before, but he came to my house because we're doing this big operation. So we got, you know, a few of the black belt people around, and so we
got pictures from that.
These monsters, man. And I mean, what I'm saying is that was about 4 years ago, maybe even time flies, maybe about 5 years ago. But the resprouts on that is amazing. Like every year I'm able to take full on big trunks. I can come back a year later and it's full blown, you know, big 6 meter high trees with some thick wood already, just because of the rootstock and the maturity of that, you know. So every year I've got cuttings, and I've left that just for fencing and things like that. And you know, when you bring those 30-meter high babies, you know, they really produce wood. So, you know, it's like I'm covered for wood. I don't even need to go into my agroforestry systems. I do explore them a lot, but these older eucalyptus that I brought down, they produce so much wood every year, you know. So it's great if you bring them down, and then you know, then they'll be at a size which you can manage and harvest regularly without you having to bring in all the black belts to help you out bring these big babies down.
Yeah, it's smart. I taken a couple down. Actually, I built the second floor of the house with them. But it's the funniest thing. The ones that I've taken down, they didn't resprout.
All right.
I don't have an explanation. I don't have an explanation. I think it's maybe because since they've been planted, the systems have degraded so much, then maybe they just get taken over by the bracharia.
Sometimes it's nice to give it a nice, because you know we chainsaw it and you know we give it like a V and we bring it down, but sometimes we leave it a mess. You know, the trunk, we leave it a mess, so you know it can suffer like that. So after we bring it down, usually it's not a nice clean cut. So it's worth coming back and giving it a nice clean cut so that you leave the trunk. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So you don't leave the trunk kind of ripped and you know, kind of broken. That's one thing. Yeah, but trees do decide to resprout or not. I remember Ernest saying, you know, and then he'll choose if he wants to resprout or not, you know. But more often than not, eucalyptus do boom and resprout. These ones are amongst brachiatas as well. But you know, it might be down to the time of year as well. If you know, if you're cutting it going into the drought, or you're cutting it, you know, in the rain season, I don't know. But they have the choice, right?
It could be. I took them down because you know when it's dry. Yeah. Yeah. But it's interesting. Sometimes they decide no more, you know?
That's it. We've got to respect that.
Yeah.
Cool.
I
I
want to ask you, how do you guys, sorry to just,
Go for it.
yeah. How do you guys do the clones? Do you take out like a nice green branch and then just put it in the bag, or?
Well, personally, I buy the clones. So, don't think it's unheard of. I don't think it's unheard of. I might have heard of that, of, people doing the eucalyptus.
No, it's very simple, man. You just get like a young shoot. You put it in a starting mix. You just need to have that very thin water spray every 4 minutes. Like they have a timer in the nursery, and they spray it every 4 minutes so that it doesn't dehydrate. Of course, that using some hormones doesn't hurt. If you get some rooting hormones, just like dip the young shoot in rooting hormones, put it there, just spray it every 4 minutes so that it doesn't dehydrate. It's going to take root.
So can that actually be done at home somehow, or it really does require a spray every 4 minutes?
You can try putting a plastic bag over the pot so that you don't have to spray it every time. I've never done it. I cannot say it works for sure. And this thing of spraying every 4 minutes is how I learned I've never done it either, but I spoke to the guy in the nursery. He told me that's how they do it. It's not very complicated to get a timer to go off every 4 minutes. It's not something you can buy, just a small one of those small timers, and they're going to activate every 4 minutes. Not something that's it doesn't require
it's just super sensitive.
quantum physics.
Just the right amount of moisture.
What?
It's just super sensitive though, huh? It has to just have that perfect amount of moisture to take root.
Yeah, no, it's not a perfect amount of moisture. It cannot dehydrate. Theoretically, you can root any species like that. Any plant should be able to, because every plant has meristematic cells which can differentiate into any tissue, right? So meristematic cells, they can become roots, they can become whatever it is. Every plant has that. But of course, some plants have it. They can do it that more easily. So species that will take root by cuttings, for example, blackberry. I mean, not blackberry. Yeah, blackberry as well. But blackberry, mulberry, and cassava, gliricidia. They just stick a piece of the stem and it's going to take root. Other species, they cannot do that. But if you maintain the leaves green, if you manage for them to not dehydrate, and the plant, you manage to maintain the physiology of the plant active, it will eventually take root, because the leaves produce root hormones. So that what happens is that leaves produce root hormones, and then they're going to transport those to the roots. But once the tree doesn't have roots, because you cut, it's just a cutting. If you maintain the leaves active without dehydration, eventually they're going to sprout the roots. And then once they have roots, they start absorbing, and then they're gone. That's the principle of micro propagation of banana plants, right? You get any part of the tissue, you put it in a medium, in a nutritious culture, and the meristematic cells are going to sprout roots. They're going to start absorbing stuff. They're going to start creating a new plant from a piece of the leaf. That's how it works, It's all a matter of having the right hormones and not allowing the tissue to die or to dehydrate in that case.
So when you plant those things like mulberries from cutting, or yucca, or yucca, I know you don't, but would you recommend leaving leaves on the cuttings to encourage that root development, or does that end up drying the thing out more than it helps?
If you're producing a seedling in a nursery,
I see.
Then definitely leave a couple of leaves at least. But if you're putting it in the field, then I don't recommend leaving leaves because they're probably going to dehydrate and die. So you're better off taking them out.
Okay, cool. And then I mean, if you propagate like a eucalyptus, for example, that way from cutting, you don't end up getting the taproot that you would get from if you planted it from like
No.
a seed, right? Okay.
You don't get the taproot. You're going to have a less robust root system. You're going to have a plant that less resistance to drought.
Yeah.
No doubt. You're never going to have that one strong taproot. The plant is more prone if you have strong winds in the area, the plant might fall, you know.
Okay.
So that's a couple of things.
But the ones from nurseries tend to be sprouted from seed, you think? So those do typically have the stronger taproot?
Wait, sorry?
The eucalyptus seedlings that you guys get for your systems that you purchase from nurseries, those you believe are sprouted from seeds, so they do have the strong taproot?
It's very rare to get eucalyptus from seeds around here. Only if you produce them yourselves, or in our case, we had a friend in Brasilia who would produce eucalyptus from seeds, but he's not there anymore. So
okay. But
you can get it occasionally, but it's rare.
Okay, but it's still a powerhouse species, even if it's not grown from seed.
Even if it's not grown from seed, it's still a powerhouse. Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
It's still very drought resistant. It still produces lots of organic matter. There's no doubt about that.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Cool. All right, guys. Anything else? Or can we wrap up?
Are there any other questions? Were there any other questions that were maybe misplaced?
No, there's a cool conversation going on here in the YouTube chat about species for very dry, cold areas. Cornell is asking about, because she's in South Africa and she's got like 300 millimeters of rain and temperatures that go down to -10 Celsius. So it's a pretty extreme climate, right? Probably one of the most extreme situations on the planet, I would say. And we're just discussing a few species. So I was asking her if she can grow almonds. Almonds for me are one of the most important species in these very dry climates because it's one of the most drought resistant. And I mean, it's not my expertise, right? Species from cold areas, but I would definitely go for almonds, pistachios, and then there's some species which I don't know. They're talking about black locust, honey locust. I don't know these species. But lots of stuff going on here.
Guys, join the Patreon. Interact with us on a more personal level. It's only $7.90. It's only $7.90.
People talk about these locusts. They seem to be very common species in tropical and subtropical climates, like black locust, honey locust, whatever locust. I'm curious about these species. But all right, guys, let's wrap it up. And yeah,
it's been great again.
Wrap it up and just reinforcing the idea of Patreon, guys in YouTube. Joining Patreon, you also get access to the Discord group, which is a pretty cool place to be, carrying on all of these discussions about species and all that. You guys can exchange a lot of ideas there. But all right, let's wrap it up. Thanks a lot, guys. Eric, Russell, Jack, it's been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys. I always look forward to these meetings.
Yes, I'm too. It's very nice.
And we'll see each other next month.
Okay.
Awesome.
Till then, guys.